Hello everybody, I'm Nathaniel M. Nasti, and this is the IMO podcast, and this is the first episode where I will attempt to break down the facts of Freddie Gray and the case in the city of Baltimore. First, let's take a look at the city itself. Baltimore is a city of 622,000 people, 63% of whom are black. Black people in Baltimore are 8 times more likely than whites to die from complications of HIV/AIDS, and twice as likely as whites to die from diabetes-related causes. White babies born in Baltimore have 6 more years of life expectancy than black babies born in the city. Black babies in Baltimore are 9 times more likely than white infants to die before the age of 1. There is a 20-year difference in life expectancy between those who live in more affluent neighborhoods in Baltimore than those who live 6 miles away in the poor neighborhoods. Officially, unemployment is 8.4% citywide. The national rate of unemployment for whites is 4.7%. For blacks, it's 10.1%. Most estimates place unemployment in the black community in Baltimore much higher, double that of the white community. About 148,000 people in Baltimore, or 23.8% of the city's population, live below the official poverty level. About 56.4% of Baltimore students graduate from high school. Blacks in Baltimore are more than 5.6 times more likely than whites to be arrested for possession of marijuana, even though marijuana use among the races are similar. In fact, Baltimore County has the 5th largest arrest rate for marijuana possession in the United States. The national rate is about 80%. Some 92% of marijuana possession arrests in Baltimore were black, one of the highest racial disparities in arrests in America. Sandtown, Winchester, Harlem Park, where Gray lived his whole life, is the highest incarceration community in Baltimore, according to a February report by the Justice Policy Institute and Prison Policy Initiative. Maryland spends $17 million annually to incarcerate inmates from this small neighborhood alone. Among people aged 16 to 64 years old, nearly half of the residents in Sandtown, Winchester, Harlem Park area are out of work. According to the same JPI-PPI study, that includes both people looking for employment and those who say they have stopped or ain't even trying. By this measure, Gray's neighborhood is 13% worse than the Baltimore average, which is 39%. Now let's take a look at the history of the violence in the city. Since 2011, over $5.7 million has been paid out by the city of Baltimore in over 100 police brutality lawsuits. Victims of severe police brutality were mostly people of color, included a pregnant woman, a 65-year-old church deacon, children, and an 87-year-old grandmother. Since January 2011, Baltimore has settled or lost an average more than 20 police brutality cases every year. According to the Baltimore Sun, in total, the city has paid out $5.7 million and spent $5.8 million more on related legal fees. Mayor Stephanie Rawlings-Blake more than doubled to $4.2 million the city's budget for future judgments, lawsuits, and fees at the beginning of the current fiscal year. There is a clause written into most settlements that prohibits victims from discussing the details of their encounter with the police in public. The Baltimore Sun first reported in December 2014, if a plaintiff settles out of court, then tells their story even on social media, the city will either seek to recoup some of the money it's already paid or halt payments it is scheduled to deliver. These non-disparagement clauses are meant to protect the reputation of the police force. They have the effect of silencing victims and hiding other, often brutal, truths from the public. In September 2014, the Baltimore Sun published a long report on police brutality and the cost of its settlements. One particularly heinous story came from the family of Venus Green, who in 2007 had her shoulder broken by an officer as she tried to call 911 to get help for her wounded grandson. According to the report, an officer was aggressively questioning Green's grandson as paramedics came on scene, then threw the 87-year-old to the floor as she refused to let him in the room downstairs where the young man kept 2 dogs. An officer was quoted as saying, "Bitch, you ain't no better than any other old black bitches I have locked up." Green recalled the officer saying as he stood over her, "He pulled me up, pushed me in the dining room over the couch, put his knees in my back, twisted my arms and twisted and put handcuffs on my hands and threw me face down on the couch." A second officer arrived soon thereafter and immediately took the restraints off Green, but her injuries will persist for years. In 2010, she filed a lawsuit against the police, and in 2012, there will be a settlement, the city agreeing to pay $95,000. By then, in her 90s, Green died, and there would be of natural causes, and a little more than a month later. Gray is not the first person to come out of the Baltimore wagon with serious injuries. The Baltimore Sun found describing a technique in which officers put handcuffs to suspects in the back of the van with no seatbelt and then drive in a reckless way that causes the individual to be tossed around without the ability to brace or prepare for impact. In one particularly gruesome case, a 43-year-old man was arrested for public urination. According to the Baltimore Sun and his lawsuit, this is what happened. Quote, "He was handcuffed and placed in a transport van in good health. He emerged quadriplegic. Before he died, he complained to his doctor that he was not buckled into his seat when the police van made, quote, a sharp turn, end quote, sending him, quote, face first, end quote, into the interior of the van," the court records state. He was, quote, violently thrown around the back of the vehicle as police officers drove in an aggressive fashion, taking turns so as to injure Johnson, who was helplessly cuffed, the lawsuit stated. Johnson, who suffered a fractured neck, died 2 weeks later of pneumonia caused by his paralysis. His family sued, and a jury agreed that 3 officers were negligent in the way they treated Johnson. The initial $7.4 million award, however, was eventually reduced to $219,000 by Maryland's Court of Special Appeals because the state law capped such payouts. Now let's talk a little bit about Freddie Gray. Baltimore residents take to the streets to protest the police custody death of Freddie Gray. Gray, age 25, died on April 19, 2015 after a week he was arrested. No one knows, or it says publicly, what exactly caused the injuries that killed Gray a week after his arrest, but one of the most prevalent theories is that he was injured during a rough ride between where he was arrested and the precinct where he was supposed to be booked. Numerous reports, eyewitness accounts describes Gray as potentially injured but speaking and using his legs as he was bundled into the police van on the day of his arrest. 30 minutes later, as officers attempted to remove him, he was unresponsive. 1 week later, Gray was dead. Now, police are saying that an additional stop was made before the driver asked officers to check on his condition. They said nothing about this stop other than its location and where it appears to be a desolate intersection with 3 vacant lots and a corner store. Last week, Police Commissioner Anthony Bax said that the second prisoner told investigators that the driver did not speed, make sudden stops, or drive erratically during the trip, and that Gray was still moving around and he was kicking and making noises. up until the van arrived to the police station. A Washington Post report published Wednesday said that a prisoner being transported with Gray heard Gray banging against the walls of the van, according to the police documents. The prisoner said Gray was banging against the walls and he believed that Gray was intentionally trying to injure himself. All I heard was a little banging for like 4 seconds, the other prisoner said, just a little banging. He also said that the van arrived at the West Baltimore police station. He heard officers saying to Gray that Gray didn't have a pulse. They were calling his name, Mr. Gray, Mr. Gray, and he wasn't responsive, said the other prisoner, Dr. Allen. People are saying that the medical examiner found Gray's injuries was caused when he slammed into the back of the police van, apparently breaking his neck. The head injury he sustained matches the bolt in the back of the van. Details surrounding exactly what happened or what caused Gray to slam his head into the back of the van is unclear. The officer driving the van has yet to give a statement to the police. It is also unclear whether Gray's head injury was voluntary or the result of some other action. According to sources, Gray was standing in the van, bent over, with his hand cuffed behind his back and his head pointed towards the back door. 6 officers have been suspended without pay over the incident, and they're now charged. And the department has admitted Gray, who is asthmatic, should have been given medical help when he requested it. As the police department, mayor's office, and state prosecutors refuse to address the development, it has done nothing but fuel anger and speculation surrounding circumstances of Gray's arrest more than 2 weeks ago. Alright, let's take a look at the riots. The mayor, Stephanie Rawlings-Blake, released a statement.
And I've made it very clear that I worked with the police and instructed them to do everything that they could to make sure that the protesters were able to exercise their right to free speech. It's a very delicate balancing act because while we tried to make sure that they were protected from the cars and the other things that were going on, we also gave those who wished to destroy space to do that as well. And we worked very hard to keep that balance and to put ourselves in the best position to de-escalate, and that's what you saw.
In other words, the mayor was saying that she gave instructions to the police to ensure protesters could exercise their free speech. She then goes on to say that in creating that space, she also inadvertently gave those who wish to destroy that space to do so as well. Baltimore Mayor Stephanie Rawlings-Blake also gave rioters space to destroy property and reportedly told police to stand down. And she was a key player in the Justice Department plan to expand federal control over local law enforcement. Rawlings-Blake was only one of 3 mayors who provided input into President Obama's task force on 21st century policing, which advocates the federalization of police departments across the country by forcing them to adhere to stricter federal requirements when they receive funding. President Obama said that the task force on 21st century policing is directed at 18,000 law enforcement jurisdictions that are out there. He goes on to say that, I know one area that's going to be a great interest in whether we can expand the COPS program that in the past have been very effective and continues to be effective but is largely unfunded, to see if we can get more incentives for local communities to apply some of the best practices and lessons that are embodied in this report. Mayor Rawlings-Blake was more than willing to apply these best practices in exchange for federal funding. Our police commanders are constantly seeking additional dollars, both to develop best practices and then teach those practices to our officers and developing leaders, she said. Also, she said, if there's any place where federal government and U.S. Department of Justice could produce a tangible impact on our officers and our efforts, it would be to provide more resources in this area, which means that she's doing it for the dollars. Might want to put a pin in that. An analysis of social media traffic in downtown Baltimore Monday has unearthed striking connections to the protests in Ferguson, Missouri last year. According to a leader data mining firm, the firm which acts to remain anonymous because of its government work, found between 20 and 50 social media accounts in Baltimore that are also tied to the peak period of violence in Ferguson. While future analysis is being conducted on the data, it suggests that the presence of professional protesters or agent provocateurs or anarchists taking advantage of Freddie Gray's death to incite more violence. The use of social media to fuel violence in Baltimore has already been highlighted by law enforcement. On Monday, police said that an online call was issued for a purge at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, starting at the Moldeman Mall and ending in the downtown area. That type of threat is based on a movie called The Purge, the plot in which involves rampant lawlessness. Y'all seen The Purge. A Maryland sheriff who went to Baltimore to help law enforcement stop Monday's riots told a radio station that he was stunned when officers alerted him of the orders to stand down. Michael Lewis is the sheriff in Wacomico County and was also a sergeant with the Maryland State Police. Lewis said that it wasn't his intention to come to Baltimore, but he felt it was his duty to help. But what shocked him the most, he said, was when the city police told him not to confront and accost the rioters. Lewis said that he didn't hear the order to stand down come from the mayor. He did hear it come from police officials. Lewis claims after the riots, many officers told him that they were done being cops in the city and how heartbroken they are that they were not allowed to defend the city and stop businesses from burning. Alright, this is my take on the situation. It's always fucked up when these things happen. First of all, the city of Baltimore has been in turmoil for a long time now. Democrats and their unions have had influence on their ideas and policies in Baltimore since 1967. The last time there was a Republican mayor. Democrats, mostly black folk, run the city of Baltimore, the unions, the schools, and the police force. Since 1969, there have only been 2 Republican governors of the state of Maryland. With that being said, it is safe to say that Baltimore is a black city. Even if the city is ran by black people, the cops, which is nearly 50% black, with nearly all black leadership, they still manage to kill niggas. Baltimore has a long history with police violence. The fact that the riots was even allowed to happen raises serious questions. A lot of people believe that this was designed to allow the setup of martial law and usher in a more powerful police state. The mayor is a part of a task force designed to federalize the local police. We can assume that after all this blows over for a while the mainstream media finds a new topic to talk about, probably the birth of Princess Kate's baby that just happened, the Baltimore Police Department would probably receive even more funding to be even more federalized. Also, I know that during stand down, the cops abandoned their vehicles in the path of the rioters and the protesters, the same ones that was later lit on fire. Unlike in Ferguson, Baltimore had way more black leadership and under complete Democrat control, yet their own cops are still targeting black folks. How is this possible? How is this allowed? I always hear how we as black are being kept down and how there's a lack of jobs, opportunities, good schools. Nearly every single mostly black city in America is run by Democrats, liberal progressives, whether they're black or white. The landfill that is now Detroit is a Democrat city. The killing fields of Chirac is a Democratic city. Even down to the hood parts of Washington, D.C., South Dallas, and Atlanta, even with all the successful black rappers and actors, actresses, whatnot, every single member of the Baltimore City Council is a Democrat. Government dependence and cronyism and union corruption has failed the schools that comes along with it. And it all has fucked up Baltimore for over 50 years. Maybe it's time for something new, not just in Baltimore, but every black city. Then maybe we can do better instead of fucking dying in the streets or in cells. Maybe we can have better schools and safer streets instead of watching them burn on CNN. But hey, that's just my opinion, in my opinion. Thanks for watching and listening. If you like this video, or if you like what you're hearing, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to IMO with Nathaniel M. Nasti. And until next time, more videos coming soon.